Hey guys, so today we're going to be doing an SC430 01 to 05 going into an IS200 using a manual gearbox. So let's get into it. Right, so as I said, this is an SC430 3UZ with originally the 5-speed gearbox, so it's the 2001 to 2005 model. This is a plug-and-play harness that's going to go into a Lexus IS200, left-hand drive and using a manual gearbox. So today we are going to go through a few things. First is the layout, so exactly where everything goes around the engine, where it plugs in. Then we're going to do the testing, which is made up of a test with just the ignition on and with the engine actually running as well. Okay, but first of all, you can see that this is an adapted harness. So we've taken the original SC430 harness from the customer, completely stripped it down, removed everything that no longer needs to be there, added in what does need to be there, and obviously made it plug and play. So first thing we're going to do, let's go take a look at what goes into that process. Right, so as you can see, they're really straightforward. We obviously strip everything down, take all the covering off, obviously remove everything it needs removing, add what we need to add in for the conversion, and obviously then tape it all up and make it all look all nice. So as I said, we're going to go firstly through the layout of the harness. And what we'll do is we'll start right here at the ECU box. Okay, so here is the 3UZ ECU from the SC430. As you can see in the standard IS200 ECU box, these do not fit in. They obviously go up to about there. This lip gets in the way. So there are a few options available to you. One is you can source an IS300 ECU box. So if you're in the European if you're in Europe, obviously all the IS200s came with this wedge-shaped ECU. For you American boys, remember that you need the 2001 to 2005 IS300, okay? The 2000-2001 IS300 in the United States only had the rectangular ECU, so that would have gone in this box, no problem. Right, if you can't get your hand on a box, don't stress too much. Basically remove the screws there, and hopefully you can see that there and there, there and there. You can pull out the ECU from there, and you can then take an angle grinder and you can grind off this lip. And as you can see, once you grind off that lip, obviously the ECU will slot straight down into there. So those are your two options for fitting the ECU inside your ECU box. Right, moving on to the connectors. You've got 5 connectors in total, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. They are all different, so you can't put one in the wrong place, so do not worry about that at all. Moving along from there, we then have our little patch harness that interfaces with the standard IS200 plugs that are left behind inside the ECU box when you remove your 1G FE engine. Okay. Then we have our tacho converter, which you can see over there. So basically that's going to convert the 4-cylinder signal from the 3UZ over to the 6-cylinder signal that's required for the IS200. These are adjustable. So I adjust them here with the engine on the stand with the, obviously, the tech stream. diagnostics, so I can see live data for engine RPM. I adjust them as best I can, but if you find they're a little bit off once you're sitting in the vehicle, you can just pop the 4 Allen key screws out of there, and you can turn the pot resistor and adjust that to fit your vehicle accordingly. Okay. Then we have our relay for the brake switch. So again, because the IS200 manuals only had a 2-wire brake switch rather than a 4-wire brake switch, we use the relay here to create those 2 signals that the 3UZ ECU needs. The 3UZ ECU needs to know when the brakes are not pressed and when they are pressed. So again, that relay takes care of that. Looking down through here, we then have 3 body plugs. So you've got 1, 2, and 3. Now, obviously, they are all different, so you cannot get them in the wrong place. So again, do not fret about that. In this case, this would normally be a gray one, but because of the SC430, they have similar plugs, we can reuse that one and that one from the SC430. And then we supply this one here from the IS200. So again, that's black and black goes together. The white goes with the gray and the cream color goes with the blue. Moving along from there, we then just have 2 junction connectors. Now, in the IS200, you only have space for 1. So we move that out of the way. So you can put this little tiny one in that little slot over there, and then this one you can just tuck away underneath, or you can put this one in here. It's a bit of a tight fit, and you can squash this one underneath because this one is obviously longer. Okay. Now that we finished with the ECU box, I'm going to cut to a photo. You can see what it looks like when everything is inside there. There you go. So that's what it looks like when it is obviously all inside the ECU box, ready to put the lid on. Okay. As you can see from the video, from the photo, the grommet obviously goes into there. So that's nice and straightforward. Harness then moves up along. Again, your engine will obviously be much further down. But it moves along here, and then we have the first piece of plastic that houses the harness here. 2 bolts to hold this in, this one over here, and this one over there. M6 bolts, 10mm socket, those will get those back on again. And the first section that breaks out here is going to be in here. And that goes to injector 1 and coil 1. Okay, right. Now that I'm here, when you are looking at this engine and want to know exactly which cylinder is which, left bank, always looking from the driver's perspective. This is the left bank. It's going to be cylinder 1, 3, 5, and 7. On the other side, it's going to be 2, 4, 6, and 8. So even on the right bank, odd on the left bank. Okay. This can also be referred to as bank 1, cylinder 1. That can be referred to as bank 2, cylinder 2 at the front there. Okay. Right, so that pops out there. Moving along here, we then have the next section that pops out over there, which goes to your oil control valve for the VVT-i for the left bank. So again, this is actually what's advancing and retarding the camshaft. Moving along from there, we then have the breakout for the TPS sensor. Remember, with the 3UZ 5-speed, you actually have a separate TPS sensor, and you have the throttle motor wires over there. Unlike the 6-speed, which is like this, you have 1 6-pin plug. All the same connections, obviously just in a different place between the 3UZ 6-speed and 5-speed. Okay, moving down there, we then break out here again and we go to the front cam sensor. Now on a 1UZ VVT-i and a 3UZ VVT-i, there is actually 3 cam sensors. You'll see when we go around there. This one is picking up a single tooth on the cam pulley. So this one the ECU can use to obviously synchronize the engine to know when to fire the injectors and coils. Moving along down from here, we then have one last breakout section down here at the bottom. This one is for the aircon pump. Now, because this customer had a SC430, he does have everything correct. So he's got the correct sump, he's got the correct oil filter housing, and he's got the correct AC pump. So again, this will just plug straight into the AC pump there. Now then, with the LS and the SC430s, there is something to bear in mind with these swaps when we do them to the IS200, 300, or Altezza. On the LS430, 2000, 2003, and the SC430, 2001 and 2005, the pressure switch for the air conditioning system did not go to the engine ECU. It only went inside the vehicle to the AC ECU. That means when we do a swap, we don't have access to the AC ECU, and obviously the IS200, 300 didn't work like that. The pressure switch went to the engine ECU. So what we do as part of the remap is we just tell the ECU that the AC pressure sensor is always okay. Okay. That's important because you guys need to be made aware that the pump will turn on even if the pressure is incorrect. So you guys need to make 110% sure that you get your system gassed before you attempt to turn it on. Otherwise, the pump will activate even with no gas and no pressure in the system. Okay. Right, moving along from there, the next section that breaks out goes down there and goes to your oil pressure switch. Now again, this is oil filter housing is going forward. The ones on the SC430 and the GS430, which you need to have to do the swap, the oil pressure switch actually face backwards, which is why the oil pressure switch breaks off here and not down there like it does on the LS. As you can see on the LS, it breaks out here by the crank sensor because it's only got to go down to there. Okay. Right, so so that can go down through the hole if you would like, go all the way through there and plug in the sensor facing towards the back there. Last section that breaks out here is going to go again through this hole down there and come out to the crank sensor. All right. So again, everything on this in terms of connectors on this front harness are different. So you cannot plug the wrong thing into the wrong place. So do not stress about that. Just follow the line all the way down and plug everything in as you go along. Right, so that's that front section over there. Moving along to here, plastic bit comes to an end, small section that we tape up there. Next piece of plastic is just going to be 2 bolts again, Bosch, and they're exactly the same as these two, 10mm socket, M6 bolt, off you go. This one has 3 sections of breakout. The first one is right at the front here, and that is going to go to your evap solenoid, which is obviously over here. Now, part of the remap is we do remove the code for the evap solenoid. So you do not have to plug this in, but because we remove the code doesn't mean that it doesn't work anymore. So on your IS200s, you had the black vent that came up there to the little black box. You can then connect that to the evap solenoid, and the rest of the solenoid went around there and plugged into the front by the throttle body here as well. Okay, so that's where that one goes. It then goes to injector 3 and coil 3, and then it goes to the cam sensor for the inlet cam on the left bank. So as I said, the one at the front is reading 1 tooth per revolution of the camshaft. This one has 3 teeth inside here. Obviously, it needs 3 teeth because it's got to actually work out the position of the cam. Because obviously, the ECU for the VVT-i is commanding either an advance or retard on the camshaft. That then gets done by the oil control valve. This sensor then reads the cam and goes, yes, I'm getting exactly what I asked for as the ECU, and it says everything is okay. Moving along to the next one that breaks out, you're going to have your noise filter that goes up there. So that just bolts onto your intake. Okay. Then it goes to injector 5 and coil 5. Really nice and simple. Moving along, you have your last section here where it breaks out, and then it's going to go to injector 7 and coil 7. So nice and simple. As you can see, everything kind of breaks out in the correct place. You highly doubt you're going to be able to make this injector reach to over there and vice versa. So again, it should be really straightforward when you are connecting that. Coming to the end of the piece of plastic, again, just a small section without a piece of plastic over it. And then obviously we tape that up and we get to the back section over here. There's 2 mounting points for this, that one over there and that one over there. So again, exactly the same as these 2 bolts here, M6 bolt, 10mm socket, and you're away. Moving along down there and coming out the bottom here, we have a few sections that are coming out. So we're going to go through those now. First off is your earth strap. Okay, so again, this is another M6 bolt, so 10mm socket for this one. You won't have any bolts in these holes here on a 3UZ. This is the one used for the 1UZ VVT-i for the earth strap. This is used for the 3UZ VVT-i for the earth strap. Okay, what you can do if you want, you can actually take a piece of emery cloth and just clean that surface before you bolt it down, just to make sure you have a really good earth, because these engines do love their earths. Then we have our accelerator pedal. So again, that's all nicely labeled. This is obviously what we've added into the system. And that comes down there, plugs into there, and in this case goes off, and there's the customer's pedal there. So this is obviously going to go through the firewall and then plug into the pedal, which is mounted inside the vehicle. Okay. If you are wondering what pedals to use, I do have a bunch of links down at the bottom for a bunch of stuff. And one of them is about the pedals, specifically for 3UZs. Okay. Next up, coming down along through there, we then have our Lambda sensor for the left bank. So again, we are only using the primary Lambda sensors. So that's the one that are in the exhaust manifold. They are used for fueling, so you do need to keep them. You can't remap them out, otherwise the engine doesn't know what's going on. What we do remap out, though, is the secondary sensors that go after the catalytic converters. Hence the reason you won't get a code for Lambda issues on the secondary Lambdas. Okay. Then coming out of here, we have our gearbox harness. So again, hopefully that's nicely labeled there. Okay, and that goes to a connector over there, so you can disconnect that. This one is for a J160, but obviously we put that on the connector there, so if you guys ever change your mind and change your gearbox for whatever reason, just give us a shout and we can make a harness that is relevant for your particular gearbox, whether it be BMW, R154, whatever, we can make you the different sub-harness to go onto there. Okay. that's that section over there. While we're here, we're going to look at this one, and obviously this comes up and plugs into the back of the harness here. That then is going down to the starter knock harness, which goes under the inlet. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut to a photograph of that. So there you can see that's the overall picture of what it looks like. Then going down, you can see the starter solenoid plug that plugs in there. And then we go to knock sensor 1 and knock sensor 2. Fantastic. Okay. Right. So as you can see in this case, the knock sensor wires were completely destroyed. You'll see as part of the build photos, we obviously redid those knock wires, so they're all nicely covered and they have labels on them. And again, they're called knock 1 and knock 2 because knock 1 is bank 1, knock 2 is bank 2. So just remember that for when you are fitting that in. Okay. Also coming out here is your main power for your starter motor. So that goes to the battery. Now, obviously in this case, it is pointing that way because this is a left-hand drive vehicle. So this will be going onto the battery, which will be placed over there. Okay. Right, so that's that section over there. Let me go around to the other side and we'll carry on with the harness as it goes around there. So as the harness moves around here, we then have another earth strap that pops out there, and again an M6 bolt, 10 millimeter socket will get that on. Again, you won't have this bolt in your engine, so don't worry about that. Moving along to the end here, we then break out and we're going to have injector 8 and coil 8. Moving along there, we then have our ACIS vacuum solenoid valve connector, which plugs in over there. This is part of the intake manifold. So that should be on your engine, even when you remove your engine harness. Now, obviously, this goes for the ACIS system. Again, I have a video down below explaining in great detail what the ACIS system is, or acoustic control induction system to give it its full name. Before you put the intake back on again, a piece of advice for you is to make sure the system is working and the actual valve is working. If you take a look here, you'll see that the white thick plug there, that's 12 volts. And the blue with the white tracer wire there, that is a ground, okay? So basically, the black wire you see here and the white wire you see there, the black wire is 12 volts and the white wire is ground. So while you have the intake off and you're putting the sub harness underneath it to go to the knock sensors and the starter motor, just jump on the floor with a car battery and put 12 volts on there, ground on there, and listen for the click from the vacuum solenoid valve that is underneath the intake before you put everything back together again. Nothing worse than putting everything back together again, finding out the ACIS doesn't work, and then having to pull the whole intake off again to get access to it. Okay. Also coming out of there, we're going to obviously have injector 6 and coil 6. Moving along, and you'll see here there are mounting points on here, so you can use some P-clamps to hold the harness on there nice and neat. But moving along from there, we're then going to have the cam sensor for the right bank, same as the other side, again measuring 3 teeth on here. We then have injector 4 and coil 4. Okay, moving along from there, we have a big section that breaks out here on the front. We obviously have injector 2 and coil 2. We also have coolant temperature sensor. We have oil control valve for the right bank. We also have the wires for the drive-by-wire motor over there. And then we have the wires for the mass airflow meter. Okay. Now with the mass airflow meters, it is important that you get the correct one for a 3UZ. The GS and the SC have a different one from the LS430. If you're ever unsure about which MAF you need, the best thing you can do is take your ECU part number, go to Toyota DIY, put your ECU part number in, that'll get you the correct vehicle. Once you've done that, go to air cleaner section. That'll include the air box, but it also includes the mass airflow meter, and it'll give you the part number for the correct mass airflow meter for your particular vehicle. Okay. The reason I say that is because basically this is LS431. It does work to start the engine, but it's not the correct one for it. But the SC and the GS, I think this plug is actually 45 degrees pointing upwards, and you do need the correct mass airflow meter for your ECU to run in the long run. Okay. Right, so moving along down here, we then go down, 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 and we are down here at a section where it breaks up here. We go to the alternator plug, so that's your 3-pin alternator plug there. We then have our Lambda plug for the right bank. So again, we're only using the primary ones. And in this case, we have the low oil level. Again, you've got the front sump on these because you need that for the swap. That then plugs directly into the oil level, which will be right here. Okay. Now then, interesting fact on the Lambda sensors for the 3UZ, you'll see this wire is very, very, very long. I'll get my hand out the way so I focus. On the other side, it's a very short one. Now, You can't use one on either side, so you can't buy another long one like this and then put on the other side. The wiring is different, so you will get an error code if you try and do that. So do bear that in mind. There are 2 different part numbers for the oxygen sensors on the 3UZ, and they are different wiring, so you can't use one on the other. Okay, and another interesting fact for you guys as well, this mid-sump that comes on an LS430, that would make this engine swappable into an IS250 as a straight fit. All you need is a GS430 third generation engine mounts, this mid-sump as you can see here, and this would drop straight into an IS250/350. All right. Okay, so that's this section over here done. And that pretty much covers the actual engine harness now, where everything goes. So as you can see, it just makes a little U shape. It's really nice and simple. If your engine is obviously out the vehicle, it'll take you about 30 minutes in total. That's including taking the intake off and everything to get the whole harness back on again. Okay. If it's inside the vehicle, it's a little bit more difficult, obviously. So you can make that decision on to where you put the harness on in what sort of order. Okay. Right. Things you need to connect that aren't as part of the engine harness. Number 1 is your main alternator cable. Okay. So in a left-hand drive vehicle, it's quite nice because you're just going from there to there. All right. But what I'm going to show you is the fuse box that it's going to go into. Obviously, they're the same. It's just the inverse of the other. So this is where you bolt your alternator main cable to. Okay. The reason you do that is because there's a 120 amp fuse here that fuses the alternator. So if anything was to happen with the wire, okay, when it's in a right-hand drive, you've got to go under, along the subframe. There's a lot of places where it can get nicked, cut, squashed, and so on and so forth. But with that fuse, if that was to happen, the fuse would blow. Everything is fine and dandy. If you're on a left-hand drive vehicle, obviously you are running dangerously close to the exhaust. So again, if that was to move onto the exhaust, catch fire, melt, again, that fuse would pop, and that would be the end of your problems. Okay, you again can come in, replace the fuse, replace the cable. Much better scenario. Okay, so guys, don't connect your alternator directly to the battery positive. Connect it to that fuse box there so you have that protection built in. Okay. Right, moving along to the next one is going to be your earth. So standard on an IS200 or 300, you have your earth that goes in the battery here. It goes down, it bolts to the chassis, and then it pops down here. You can see my little cable dangling there. So that you can then bolt onto the block. Okay, so that's basically your main earth for your starter motor, because your starter motor bolts to the block. Okay. The 2 other earths that you want to add on, or I recommend that you add on, is one of the gearbox bolts. On the original car, you would have seen it. There's just basically an earth braid. It's not actually like an insulated cable. It's just a braid. And it went from one of the gearbox bolts directly to the chassis leg. I would definitely put that back on again, irrespective of what gearbox you have. And then lastly, along the firewall here, there was an earth. Again, I think it was a braid that went from the firewall to the engine on the 1G, and it bolted on this side. Okay. Take that same earthing and just bolt it directly onto the cylinder head down here. You can, if you get yourself an M10 bolt, it'll go into that hole there. That's absolutely fine. Otherwise, you can put it on here, but I would definitely put it on that one if possible. Okay. Right. So apart from the engine harness that all plugs in, you've got main alternator cable that goes to the fuse box, and you've got your earth that's already in the car that you need to bolt on. Okay. We've already been through this one. Obviously, this one is from the starter motor. That'll just go directly to the battery. And just make sure when you are putting everything back together that you include this cable, because this cable goes down into your fuse box, and that's what supplies the power for all of the vehicle. If you take a look at this one here, there's actually sticky up tabs on there. This should be the other way around, and then it actually holds this one down. And you'll see the length of this, if you take a look, is longer than this one. So this is actually designed to go on top of that one and bolt into one bolt. Okay. Right, so that is it for the layout. Hopefully that's been super helpful and you guys know where everything goes. But what we'll do now is we're going to get the engine ready. We're going to come back and we're going to do the testing. So, see you in a second. Right, guys, so we are back for the testing of the engine. And as I said, it was going to be made up of 2 sections, one with the ignition on and one with the engine actually running. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go through all the tests. Obviously, I'd give a brief explanation of what we're doing, why we do it, etc. So, first of all, we're going to do ambient temperature. Because it's a plug and play and we're using a standard ECU, we are actually reading the outside temperature. All I'm going to do is pop over to here and we should see the outside temperature displayed on the AC climate control there. Next up, we'll come back to the cluster, and what we're looking for is the check engine light, the charge light, and the oil pressure light. So check engine light, charge light, oil pressure light. You'll also have the low oil level, which is the yellow one at the top there. Again, because I got the wrong sump on here, and I use this with a bunch of other engines that don't have low oil level, like Japanese stuff, that bulb is removed, but that will work on your particular vehicle, okay? Right, then we're going to go and we're going to test reverse and speedo. So what I'm going to basically do here is bridge the reverse switch over there. It's going to make the cluster beep. That then tells me that the wiring all the way from there to inside the vehicle and everything is correct. So when you put it in reverse, your reverse lights are going to come on. For the speedo, we're going to use our little tacho corrector here, and we're going to force a signal down the speed sensor plug, and we should see the speed appear on the dash there. So that's what we're looking for there. Little note with the speed sensor, guys, if you get into the vehicle and you find your speedo is not working, one way to diagnose whether it's wiring / sensor or actually a problem with the gearbox, if you've got a buddy around and you've got a drill, basically unbolt the speed sensor on the back there, tape your drill to it, get your buddy to sit in the car with the ignition on, spin the drill. If he sees speed coming up, then you know that there's nothing wrong with the sensor or the wiring, then you know it's actually just in the gearbox that it's not spinning, okay? If you do that and the speedo is not going up, then clearly there's something wrong. Either a wire got pinched in the fitting or the sensor itself is broken. But again, you can then focus purely on the electronic side and you can forget about the gearbox, because it should mean that the problem is on this side and not on the gearbox side. Okay. Right, OBD2 test. Basically what I mean is we are plugged into the standard OBD2 port on an IS200 there, and we are going to be able to see all the live data with GTS. So this is GTS. Some of you are more familiar with TechStream. This one is a subscription-based one. I think you pay like €7 for a day, I think like €15 for a week, and you can go all the way up to a year. So again, this is sort of dealer-level diagnostics. You can do pretty much everything on here that you can do with TechStream. It's just very easy to use. If you're in Europe, you can just pay the euros, have your time on there, and off you go. Okay. Right, and then we're going to do AC clutch and AC request. So for AC clutch, we're going to go back into here. We're going to go to active test, and we're going to tell it to turn on the AC magnetic clutch relay, which is a relay that is in this little fuse box at the front over there. So all we're going to do is listen for the click of the relay. That's going to tell us that the command has been sent via the car to the ECU, and the ECU is wired correctly to turn on that relay. Next up is AC request. So effectively what we're going to do there is we're going to go to the car. We're going to press the AC button there. On the live data here, you've got AC signal is going to be off. I'm going to press the button, it's going to go on. I'm going to go press it again, and it's going to go back to off. That's basically what we're looking for. And the reason we do that is because of the remap. The data for the aircon switch is transmitted via MPX. So as part of the remap, the MPX data is changed so that the SC430 ECU can understand the IS200 and vice versa. Okay, then lastly is the brake switch. So effectively what I'm going to do is I'm going to imitate someone pressing the brakes by giving this wire here 12 volts. That's then going to make the relay click, and again we're going to pop back over to GTS. It is then we're going to see stop light switch, and it's going to go from off to on. I'm going to disconnect the wire, it's going to go from on to off, so we know that's working correctly. Right, so that is all the tests with the ignition on. Then we're going to move to engine running. Starter circuit, basically what I mean is because it's plug and play, I want to make sure that obviously when I insert the key, move it to the start position, the engine cranks over. That tells me that all the wiring is correct in terms of the starter circuit. ACIS, basically what we're looking for there is this little valve needs to go after a few seconds after startup, okay? So depending on your angle, you might see it when I turn the key, but it does take a few seconds after start. Drive-by-wire test, well, that's relatively straightforward. I'm just going to go over to the accelerator pedal. I'm going to press it. If the engine revs up, we know drive-by-wire is working 100%. Oil control valve test, we're going to go back to GTS, active test, and we're going to test one bank at a time. So we'll do bank 1, then we'll do bank 2. You'll basically have the engine like idling. As soon as I engage the test, it'll go really lumpy. And then as I do the other bank, it'll go really lumpy, and then obviously back to normal when I stop the test. Injectors and coils. So what I'm going to do there is I am going to go around and I'm going to pull out each injector one by one. So because I need to do it one-handed, these injectors aren't actually clicked on. They're just resting on the injector. So if you do hear a slight odd misfire when I am testing, that's more than likely the reason why. But it's almost impossible to do it single-handedly and get them off. The other reason that I pull the injectors and not the coils is because with the 3UZ, a little quirk with them is if the ECU picks up a fault with the coil, what it'll do is actually shut down the injector. So again, if you are testing for a misfire, rather pull the injectors out than try and do the coils, because the ECU will shut the injector down if you pull the coil out and it picks up a misfire on there, okay? Right, then tacho. again, we're just going to make sure that the tacho is working, that it's accurate. Again, like I said, I have adjusted it here on my side with the best of my ability, but if you do need to adjust it, again, really simple. Pop open that box. There's a little pot resistor, a blue thing with a white crosshead on. Get yourself a tiny little Phillips screwdriver, and you can just adjust that ever so slightly. Okay. You're going to need some sort of live data to know exactly what the engine RPM is, but yeah, you can adjust it. It's not fixed. Right, and next up is coolant temperature. So again, as part of the remap, MPX data of engine coolant is something that needs to be transmitted to the vehicle. So we should see that go up. Ideally, what we want to do is obviously when we turn the ignition on, we'll see where the vehicle is. If it's less than 40 degrees, it won't show anything. But by the time we've carried out all these other tests, the engine coolant should have picked up, and we'll see the needle actually moving up, so we know it is actually going up with the temperature. And then lastly, diagnostics. We'll go through the diagnostics, how you do them, what you're looking for, etc., and anything else you can do. Okay, so without wasting any more time, let's jump into the ignition on testing. So obviously, you in your vehicle, you're going to take your key, you're going to insert it. That turns the ignition on. We're going to pop over and look at the ambient temperature. 11 degrees, there you go. So that is fantastic. So that's working. And as I said, that will go up and down depending on the temperature. Next up is check engine light, charge light, and oil pressure. So we've got check engine light, charge light, oil pressure. Fantastic. When we start the vehicle up, you'll see all of those will go out, and that's exactly what we're looking for. Next up is reverse and speedo. So again, reverse is kind of easy. I'm just literally going to, I say that. Sorry. There you go. So I'm just bridging that connector there. Fantastic. So again, you can see everything from the terminal all the way to inside the vehicle is 100% correct and working, because we get the buzzer from the cluster over there. Right, this is now for the speedo. So you can see we've got absolutely no speed on there. If you just bear with me a second. So you can see there now it's outputting a signal. And again, I'm testing all the connections. So that's 12 volts, that's ground, and that's the signal. And obviously on the dash now, you can see we do have a speed signal there. And so if I disconnect this, there goes away the speed signal. So that is perfect. So we know that's working 100%. OBD2 test. It does take a while to connect up, so I have already connected. But what I'll do is I'll cut all of this large amount of data out. And there you go. You can see we've got 42 degrees. Just not enough to get the temperature to come off the needle. But yeah, you can see everything is working there as it should. We've got intake temperature, obviously coolant temperature. Engine is obviously 0 RPM. Right, so AC clutch. So as I said, we're going to go in here. We're going to go to active test. We're going to go to AC magnetic clutch relay. We're going to go to test that. And I'm going to keep quiet now. You should hear the relay click. Okay, fingers crossed you did hear that, but it was definitely clicking. So that's all done. Right, next up is going to be AC request. So we want to go over to the data list. Again, filter down all of the data. So what we are looking for now is AC signal. So currently it is off. We're going to pop over here, press the AC button. That is obviously changed to on. Pop that off. And it's gone back to off again. So that's fantastic. Right, and brake switch. So now we want to get rid of that. Now we're looking for stoplight switch. So it's currently off, because obviously there's no 12 volts going to the brake switch wire, which we will do now. And hopefully you heard that relay click. So it's doing its job. Stoplight switch has gone to on. Pop that off. And that goes back to off. Fantastic. Okay, right, so that is it for the ignition on testing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get myself ready. Got to get my ear defenders and everything on. Back in a second, and we will do the test with the engine running. Rightio, so now we're back with the testing with the engine running. I'm going to do a very brief recap of what we're going to do. So starter circuit, if I turn the key and the engine starts, that's working. ACIS, we're going to check that valve at the back of the engine. Drive-by-wire test, we're going to go press accelerator pedal. Oil control valve test, we're going to quickly do on the laptop. Injectors and coils, I'm going to go and unplug them all one by one so you can hear every single cylinder misfiring as I do. Tacho, we'll make sure that that works. Coolant temperature, I've actually let the engine warm up a tad, so it's gone just over cold. So hopefully by the time we finish the other tests, it should go up. And then we'll do diagnostics. So without further ado, as like in your vehicle, let's go for it. 1, 2, 3. Fantastic. So that is the starter circuit. That has gone down, so that is fantastic. Drive-by-wire test. That's good. Oil control valve. Do bank 1 first. Right, so let's go injectors and coils. So we'll start here with number 8. Go over to number 6. Go over to number 4. Go to number 2. Go to number 7. That's injectors and coils, and then tacho. You can see it's about right. It's about 1,000. Take a look on here. It's about 1,000. There you go. I think that's pretty much perfect. What I will do. Let's see if we can see it. Tacho. Yeah, coolant temp has definitely gone up, so that's perfect. And then we'll do some diagnostics. So you can see all the lights have gone off. Just quickly get them. Right, okay. So that's pretty much everything perfect there. So what we'll do now is we'll go through the diagnostics. So as you can see, the whole time the engine was running, we had no check engine light on, no battery light, and no oil light. So that's absolutely perfect. Coming over to the actual computer now, you can see we've got absolutely 0 trouble codes. So again, part of the remap, we remove all the trouble codes for the automatic gearbox. So basically it's a manual ECU now. We also remove the secondary lambdas, the evap, all of that type of jazz. So again, that is not coming up on here. Obviously, I've started the engine numerous times today. I've let it completely go up to operating temperature, etc. Just to make sure that everything is okay at all sort of ranges. So again, this is not a case of I've just started up and I keep resetting it. It's been started numerous times today. But yeah, so basically absolutely no codes. So in your vehicle, if you get a check engine light, there is a sensor that is a problem that needs to be rectified, okay? Because in normal running, as you can see there, you should have no check engine light on at all, all right? Now then, in terms of diagnostics, this is obviously the best way to do diagnostics, is to use a program like GTS, like TechStream, like one of those handheld OBD devices that you can plug in and you can pull the codes from. You can also obviously have those little handheld ones via Bluetooth, you know, that you get an app on your phone. Again, a lot of ways to do it, but you do need to do this. On the European and the US 3UZs, you can no longer bridge 2 pins in the OBD2 port and flash the check engine light to get the codes. They removed that. In America, they removed it right from the 1UZ VVT-i, but in Europe and America, they did it from the 3UZ VVT-i. Funnily enough, Japanese models, 3UZ, you can still actually bridge those 2 pins and get check engine light codes. It's only Europe and America that got done over there. Okay, but bridging those 2 pins to put the vehicle into diagnostic mode doesn't do nothing in this particular case. What you can do with that, which might be quite useful if you are struggling, is when you bridge those 2 pins. So on the OBD2 port, it's pin 4 or 5, because 4 and 5 are both grounds, and pin 13 is TC, or trouble codes. You can bridge those 2 pins, okay, and that'll then lock the ECU with 10 degrees of timing, okay. So the reason you might want to do that is if you're getting a weird issue, or it feels underpowered and you don't know why, and you think you may have skipped a tooth, or maybe you're just on a timing belt and you want to be absolutely sure that you are correct. Again, timing lights either around the wires, if your timing light works, because not all of them do. If not, you need to get a spark plug wire, stick it on the plug, put the other side inside the coil, and then put your clamp around the leads, okay? Then down here, you've got 0, 5, 10, and 15 degrees. And on your crank pulley, there's your mark right there. So again, I've used Tipex or correction fluid just to make it look all really nice and bright so you can see it. But yeah, if you do a timing belt change and everything goes back together and it starts up and you want to be doubly sure, grab a timing light, stick it on there. It should be on 10 degrees. If it's not, then you can pull the covers back off and go and check it. If you've got other weird issues, you want to check that quickly first. Again, super nice and simple to do. All right. Okay, that's pretty much it, guys. Everything is working 100%, super happy with this, so we've got to get this off and get it off to the customer. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them down below. Try and get as often as I can onto there, but I am only one person, so again, I must apologize if I don't get to every single one. But yeah, if you have a question, go down below. If you're looking for quotes or support or anything like that, you can email us at info@phoenixenginemanagement.com. That will then get you to this correct department. It's got an auto reply on that'll tell you exactly where to email certain inquiries. Okay. But thanks for watching, guys. We'll chuck some photos on now of what the harness looked like before and what it looks like after we finished our work. But for everything else, thanks for watching, guys. See you again later. Bye.